The place had gone from bad to worse. I come back here, the troubles at that point then were boiling and raging. 1972 was the worst year of the troubles. Bombings, killings, that was it. That filled the airwaves, it filled the nightly news. Nobody talked about anything other than who was killed today, who was blown up, blah, blah. The UDA, where I lived, a place called Milltown, was actually then uh, expanded. They built, I think, I'm not sure how many, roughly 200 more houses were built. And the UDA moved into that area. And all my friends who had been in the UDA anyway. And I would never say that I was forced, coerced, or, pressured in any way, but to cut a long story short, I eventually joined the UDA. And I can remember the night I joined the UDA like it was yesterday. You know, I went into a room, a darkened room. There were three men sitting behind a table with masks on them. There was another man with a mask on him standing beside me. He handed me a statement, a swearing-in statement, an oath. He held it in front of me and told me to read it, while I had a gun in my left hand. In my extended hand, I had a Bible. And that was it. And I remember thinking, oh dear, because they made it very clear, there and then, that you'll not be leaving this organisation alive. That was the way of it. And I think the seriousness of it then just began to, filter into my 17-year-old brain. I was 17.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And I realised then, I thought, what the hell? This is not... But, I felt trapped then. And also, they would sort of make you do things that were basically... stupid things like rioting and, breaking windows and hijacking cars and stuff like that. Not low level stuff, And then it just graduates on until it becomes very serious, So,
can I ask one question just
yeah,
also
sure.
about while we're, because, one of the themes of our series is looking at often how religion's used in conflict areas to justify each side's.
Yeah.
Did you have a sense, even though, today you're not a religious person, back then, did you have a sense of maybe what I'm doing, joining them, is God's happy with me to do this?
I don't know if I personally believe that, but that was the overarching thing of the organisation, you know what I mean? God's always on everybody's side. You go back to the First World War, and the soldiers were blessed by their minister on the British side. And, the same minister of the same church, not the same minister, but you know what I mean, the same church was blessing the German side and saying, go forth and, blah, blah, blah. And, so God's on everybody's side, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At that point, so there was God and Ulster was, God and Ulster's a UVF slogan, but it was used by us as well, for God and Ulster and, Ulster Freedom Fighters, the UDA morphed into the UFF, although nobody was ever allowed to say that. And, so God is a part of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And 1974, we were sent out to do some, 10th October 1974, and we were handling an explosive device, myself and a friend, and it went off prematurely. And I often tell people, that I didn't know what had happened. There was a big ball. I didn't hear a bang. You can't outrun a bomb because bombs go off, and it just happens in a nanosecond. My friend lost his arm. His right arm had been blown off. I was all covered in shrapnel, but for some odd reason, I was in one piece. The army descended on us. They had been sitting watching us, and I often say, that had it been a few years later, they wouldn't have arrested us. They would have shot us, because that became the thing that became known as shoot to kill, because it was basically, saving a lot of trouble. Just shoot the terrorists and be done with it, So we were fortunate. My friend was fortunate in a way that the army took him into care in the army hospital, put him in a helicopter, took him to an army hospital and saved his life. Because you're not going to survive very long with your arm off, because your blood's just
Yeah.
being pumped out of your body. We were interrogated at the old barracks, in Derry. It was known as the Victoria Barracks, and for 3 days. Now nowadays you'd be put under a forensic suit and blah blah, but in those days there was none of that. And I had a pair of trousers on me, and they were so saturated in blood that they hardened, and they were like wood, so you could scarcely bend your legs because they dried. And interestingly, the thing that happened next changed my life forever. We were remanded in Derry to Crumbling Road Prison, which is an old Victorian Belfast, an old Victorian prison, which is now basically a museum and nothing more. To C Wing, which was the loyalist wing at that time. The UVF and the UDA shared that. And such was the level of troubles that young people, and believe it or not, 19-year-olds, were going in there like a conveyor belt. Now, this is true of Republicans, because I have friends who were in the Republican conflict. It was the same on their side. It was unbelievable. In fact, it was so unbelievable that you would have been sent to Crumbling Road. You would have been there for a couple of months. Then you would have been shipped out to Longcash, where there was more space, and your places would have been filled. Such were people packed, and I have to say packed because they were packed on the Crumbling Road like sardines. Cells in Crumbling Road were made for one person. There were 6 people in them. Bunk beds were 3 on top of each other on both sides. And I remember talking to Americans one time, and they said, and what was the sanitation like? And they were in disbelief when I said it was a bucket in the corner and a jug of water. And from 8:30 at night until 8:30 in the morning, that was it. But the thing that changed my life happened there, and I'm not sure, I'm thinking it might have been around the start of December. I met this guy. We'll call him Fred. And you were not allowed under any circumstances to talk to anybody about why you were there. And the reason for that was that the army, the British forces would stick in spies. And you could say to me, well, I'm from Armagh. I don't know if you're from Armagh. I just know you from seeing you, So you were not allowed to talk to anybody. So this guy comes and says, my name's Fred, and I'm in here for killing people. And I'm sort of going, because you weren't allowed to ask questions either, because that would have labelled you as possible potential person gathering information. And oh, really? Right. I says, I was sent out to kill this shopkeeper. Now, this may sound callous, but given it was 1974, so that context, it doesn't make anything that happened right, but I'm just saying it was a time of tragedy.
Yeah, it's a crazy time.
Crazy doesn't even cover it. It was manic and crazy, And he says, and this was a corner shop, and he says, I went in to kill this shopkeeper, and I'm going, right, okay. Now, this shopkeeper's crime was probably, he was a Roman Catholic. So back to your point of the division of, Catholics and Protestants. So this man had an area, a shop in an area that was probably Catholic stroke nationalist in those days. And he goes into the shop, corner shop, tons of them around. In those days, I don't know if it's the same nowadays, but you opened the door and it went ding. You walked in, and usually the counter, behind the counter would have been a door, and it would have went into the dwelling, generally speaking, into the kitchen, because my grandfather actually had a shop very similar. And the man comes out and says, hello, sir, can I help you? And he pulls out a gun, shoots him. Now, Freddie's telling me this, and I'm sort of thinking, going, okay, I'm a tough guy. Oh, really, Freddie? Didn't rest that easy with me, to be honest. And I says, I felt myself saying, and I shouldn't have, but I said, what happened then? He says, I went to leave, he says, and the door of the kitchen opened again, he says, and in walked his wife. Now, there was I say like a moral code in those days, but you didn't shoot women, you didn't shoot children, you didn't shoot holy men, regardless of whose holy men they were. There was a there was a line that nobody crossed. You know, an unwritten rule, maybe if you want to call it that. And I says, I'm trying to look tough at the same time, saying, please don't tell me. He says, I shot her too, because she seen her husband lying on the ground and he was in a pool of blood and he was either dead or dying. So she was screaming the walls. And he says, what else could I do? So I had to shoot her. And I go, trying my best not to look shocked. And I says, then what did you do? And he says, I want to leave. He says, I just got to exit, to leave, and next thing the door opened again, and then walked her 8-year-old daughter. You know, he probably seen the colour drain out of my face at that point, you know, because I thought, you're not going to say what I think you're going to say. But I felt myself saying, you know, what did you do? And he says, I started shooting at her, of course. So he's jesting with his hand, you know, bang, 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 bang. And he says, and the girl's running around the shop screaming, and he's running around after her, shooting at her. You know, and again I said, you know, what was I come at? And with the most visible sign of disappointment I've ever seen. He had red hair for a start. He was, you know, with a high cheek colour. He was sort of very, you know, red anyway, naturally red. And I remembered as well, he had a brown leather jacket on him and a plaid shirt, you know, and to the day I die, that image will never leave me, you know. And he says, I said, what happened? I ran out of ammunition, he says. And he looked so disappointed with himself that he'd run out of ammunition and he wasn't able to kill that girl who'd just killed her mother and father 2 seconds earlier. You know, and I went away. I left that guy who subsequently hanged himself, I have to say. I left him and I went away to my cell, you know, and I lay down and I thought, I can't be a part of this. You know, this is too much for me, for James, you know. So I vowed there and then that whatever happened, that I would devote my life to peace, to finding, you know, peaceful solutions to our troubles here, because, you know, doing things like that were not the answer. It was never going to be the answer.